Today we are going to talk about two stories written by Huang Fan, and I have entitled this week, the lecture this week, Social Problem, Huang Fan and his Social Problem Urban Fiction. Okay, so we know that the focus is on all of the social problems presented in the two stories. But before we get into the lecture first, I think there are many things we should notice. First of all, in this week we started going to the phase of urban fiction. That is, as I say in the introductory lecture, Huang Fan and Lin Yao, the poet and novelist, they call for a need for some kind of urban literature in the beginning of the 1980s. Okay, so this is the urban fiction per se. The urban fiction itself, written by Huang Fan, and next week we are going to read the story, the novella written by Zhang Dachun. But in these two stories, we see some points which are greatly different from the picture we are given in the previous weeks. First of all, we no longer see the country people. The characters of the fiction, they came from the countryside. We see people living in the city itself, or people living around the city. Like, for example, in Rainy Nights, we see the character, the main character, the narrator, the schoolboy and his parents. They live in a suburban area, maybe in Taipei or some place else. And the second point is that in the stories written by Chen Yingzhen and Huang Chunming, we see the main characters, they were oppressed by certain specific characters. For example, in Ninth Fred, Liu Xiaolin, she was oppressed by the foreign boss, right? And in Young Widow, we can say that those burglars in Young Widow bar, they were oppressed by the owner of the bar, right? They were exploited by the owner of the bar. But in these two stories, we did not see a specific character or specific characters who play the role of oppressors. We only see the force of the city, the force of the urban world as the oppressors. They play the function of oppression on all of these main characters in the city. Okay, so I think these 2 points are very important. So before we and there's a third point. In these two stories written by Huang Fan, we are given a more dynamic picture of the city, right? Because in this, for example, in the city, in Rainy Night, we see the main character Zhang Bumai. He took the boy going from NTU hospital to the police station, and then again they took the boy. Going back to the boys' home in the suburban area. Okay, this is a more dynamic. We see the story structure is also the urban structure itself, right? And also in the story Tongpu Street, the story, the dynamic picture is given when we know that the suburban area is changed by the building of a bridge. And this kind of transformation is present in the story from beginning to end. Okay, so this is three different things that we can see in Huang Fan's stories. Okay, so the first statement we see here is Huang Fan's position on his urban fiction. In one of his representative work, 都市生活, City Life, he said that, I think this is the preface or the first chapter of this book. He said that I have to write a new breed of Chinese characters which are completely different from those in Taipei people. Okay, so at least we can know two things about this. We can know two things from this statement. The first thing is that Bai Xianyong's Taipei people is one of the most pioneering work in Taiwan's urban fiction. Okay, so no matter what kind of fiction, what kind of urban fiction you are going to write about, Taipei, you will be writing stories very similar to or related to the stories in Taipei people, but Huang Fan tried to change it. Okay, so from Taipei people, the second point we know that Taipei people, they are not really Taipei people. They are people from all the places in mainland China, right? All the cities in mainland China. So they are Shanghai people, they are Nanking people, they are Guilin people, and maybe they are Peking people, right? But in the two stories we see today, they are really Taipei. The characters, they are really Taipei people. They live inside Taipei or around Taipei. They live in the suburban area of Taipei. Okay, so this is what Huang Fan's position about his urban writing and the difference between Huang Fan and Bai Xianyong. Okay, and Huang Fan is the pen name of the writer. His real name is Huang Xiaozhong. Xiao means filial piety, and Zhong means loyalty. But Huang Fan, I think this pen name is quite appropriate for Huang Fan because Fan means ordinary. Huang Fan. Ordinary. Okay. Huang Fan, Fan means ordinary or ordinary people. So he writes a lot about those ordinary people living in the city. Okay, so I think the pen name he gave to himself is quite appropriate. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Huang Fan, the writer. He was born in 1950 in Taipei. He's a graduate of Zhongyuan College of Science and Engineering, but the college is renamed as Zhongyuan University right now. It's in Zhongli, not very far from the place I live. And in 1979, when Huang Fan was 29 years old, he used Lai Shuo, the story we are going to read, where we are talking about the theme of the city and the politics, right? His first piece of fiction, his first piece of published fiction. He won the United Daily News fiction competition. United Daily News fiction competition is very important in Taiwan. Once you won the fiction competition, you will be one of the most famous writer in Taiwan. And we also see another one is China Times fiction competition. It's also very important. Okay, and of course we are going to read this story, but we are going to maybe I can talk a little bit about this story Lai Shuo, because in this short story Lai Shuo we see a marginal character of Taiwan's independence movement, because we know that after the 1970s, more and more Taiwanese people, they try to differentiate themselves from those people or the land of mainland China. They don't want to be a part of China anymore. They want to be an independent political identity. So Lai Shuo is one of the marginal figure in this kind of movement. And in this story, we can see Huang Fan has some kind of a cynic attitude toward politics. Because in this story, we see how Lansor was exploited by the key figures in that movement. And he's a very sympathetic character for readers. Okay, so this is what we are going to read maybe 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now. The next year, Huang Fan won the same competition for a second time with Rainy Night. So you can say that although he did not write from a very early age, but he won the award second year in a row, right? So he became a very famous writer at that time. Okay, and so we are going to talk about this Rainy Night, the story Rainy Night. This is the first story we are going to talk about. And he also has another very famous urban fiction story, that is everybody needs 秦德夫，人人需要秦德夫。According to many of the critics in Taiwan, this is the Huang Fan's version of The Great Gatsby, because we know that The Great Gatsby, written by the American novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald, is set in New York City, and Everybody Needs Qin Defu is set in Taipei City. Okay, we can see a lot of similarities between these two stories. And the second thing is that according to the title, Everybody Needs Qin Defu. Actually, this is a very ironic title because nobody really needs Qin Defu. They just want his money. Qin Defu is like a Great Gatsby. He's a very rich criminal in Taipei City. And the Great Gatsby is a very rich, maybe he's a bootlegger, or some other kind of criminals in New York City. You know, bootlegger is people who selling the people who sells illegal alcohols during the 1920s and 1930s. Okay, and in this story set in Taipei, we see Qin Defu. He's also a criminal, and everybody wants to be his friend, but they want to be his friend for his money. Okay, so we can see the great similarity between these two stories. Okay, and like I say, Huang Fan is pioneering in two aspects. One is urban fiction, the other is postmodern fiction. Okay, so in the 1980s, Huang Fan developed himself into a pioneer in both of the fields of urban fiction and postmodern fiction. In the former category, his representative works are City Life, 都市生活, and the Tycoon, 财阀. The second one is a very long novel. And in 1985, he published How to Measure the Width of a Ditch, 如何测量水沟的宽度. This is arguably the first postmodern work of fiction in Taiwan, because if you can read Chinese, you can Google and you can find a lot of postmodern story collections in Taiwan, and many of the story collections included Huang Fan's this piece of work, How to Measure the Width of a Ditch. And from the title, we know that this is the title of this story is very strange. How to measure the width of a ditch? It's quite simple, right? You just get a ruler which is long enough, and you can measure the width of the ditch, right? But from this title, we know that the nature of urban fiction is not about the story itself. It's not about the plot of the story. It's about how to manipulate the plot and how to explore the possibility of storytelling. Okay, so we can see this Huang Fan is the pioneers of both of these two fields of fiction. And the rise of urban literature is something that we have to explain. Why it happened in the early 1980s? We know that first of all, this is made possible by economic prosperity in the 1970s. Okay, So we know that the development of the urban world is made possible by the economic achievement of Taiwan during the 1970s. Okay, and it's also made possible by the writer's urban life. For example, Huang Fan himself. Huang Fan, he is a literary figure. He lived in Taipei and he did not live other places. He did not live in other places. He lived a lot of areas in Taipei. So it is made possible by the writer's urban life because maybe a lot of these urban fiction writers, they live in apartment. Apartment is something very unique in the city, right? At least during the 1970s and 1980s. Okay, it will not, apartment life will not be possible, would not be possible in the countryside. Okay, we only have bungalows or houses in the countryside. And it was made possible also by political freedom at that time, because we know that President Jiang Jingguo, the son of President Chiang Kai-shek, initiated the process of democratization of Taiwan. And more and more people can speak their own political ideas, speak out their own political ideas freely. So those writers of urban fiction, they can speak out their own political ideas, social ideas in their fiction freely. Okay, so we can see a lot of social problems. Please check the last point. A lot of social problems, because when you talk about social problems, you are indirectly or directly criticizing the government, right? Okay, so we can see chaotic life. Maybe you can say that the story Rainy Night is a very chaotic story. We can see a lot of mistakes, a lot of complaints in the story. And we can see class oppression. We can maybe there's a lot of rich people in the urban world, but we can also see a lot of poor people in the urban world, right? Okay, and maybe we can imagine one of the characters, an old man in Tongpu Street, Ah Zibo. Ah Zibo, he's a character. He moved into the city from the suburban town, and later on he went back to the city because he cannot be fitted into the city. Maybe he's oppressed by the rich people there. Okay, and we can see urban development because we can see the building of bridge or hotels in the two stories in the story Tongpu Street, especially in the story in Tongpu Street, and we can see social alienation, and maybe we can say that the alienation between Zhan Bumai and his wife in Rainy Nights is a form of a social alienation. Okay, so if you want to criticize all of this problem, if you want to present the negativity of the city, you have to consider the attitude of the government, right? So if you don't want to get arrested like Chen Yingzhen, you have to consider the political tolerance of the government. Okay, so at that time, maybe those urban writers they felt that Taiwan is free enough for writing this kind of fiction, so they start the period of urban literature. Okay. And there's also a point which is very important. In urban literature or urban fiction, city is not only a setting, but also a socialized and institutionalized space. What is this point? What is the implication of this point? Because in the city, cities is not only a living space, it's also a space where social relations unfolds. And it's also a space where social institutions unfolds. For example, in the two stories, you can see husband and wife relationship. We can see father and son relationship, right? And we can see the relationship between policeman and Zhan Bumai. And we can see relationship between the nurse and the Zhan Bumai and the nurse. and the child named Axin, right? And the social institution. Social institution is quite an abstract term, but just for one example, you know the meaning, because, for example, the story Rainy Night. The story is basically about the meaning of marriage, and the marriage is some kind of a social institution, right? You can see the problem of marriage in the urban fiction. Okay, so this is the point of urban literature or urban fiction. And this is about postmodern stories. Like I said, postmodern stories or novels do not try to tell a story or to make sense, because they are mainly about exploring the possibilities of storytelling. So you can, if you have read one of the postmodern stories, you can maybe you will feel that after you reading, you feel that you don't quite understand the points or the message of the story, right? But this is just the point of a postmodern story. It's not for you to understand the truth in the story, because we know that postmodern story is about the death of the truth and the God, and maybe the coherence of the whole storyline. But it's also about the possibility of storytelling. Okay, so what kind of a way you can use to write your story, to tell your story. Okay, so this is the main point of postmodern stories. Okay, so that is how stories can be told, how a plot can be manipulated in order to make readers reflect upon the nature of fiction as a genre. So it's quite, of course, I think the reading experience of postmodern stories can be very unenjoyable. Okay, so it's quite a challenge for readers to read this kind of postmodern stories. Okay, so the story is not mainly about the event of measuring the width of a ditch, like I said. It's about how to narrate such meaningless story. And this is another piece of Huang Fan's very famous work, A History of Condo Cells. The stories I introduced here are all translated into English. So if you are interested, you can find them yourself by yourself. A History of Condo Cells, 房地产销售. This is one of the postmodern and urban stories written by Huang Fan. In this story, we see a manager of the construction company. After an experience of selling houses and apartments for more than a decade, he tried to initiate a project, a construction project which can fulfill the needs of all customers. Because you see, in the modern world, all kinds of construction projects are they are with the character of a sameness. All of the units of the project are the same, but we know that people are very different, right? You and me, we are very different, and in the city, we have a lot of different peoples. So in this story, the manager of this construction company, he tried to initiate a buffet-style construction project. This is all-you-can-eat style construction project. You can pick your pick things you like and construct your own house or your apartment. Okay. So in this ironic story, we can see a lot of characters. So this is one of the key features of Huang Fan's urban fiction. You can see a lot of characters, which are maybe they are only possible in the urban world. For example, in the story we see a single, which is not an unmarried guy, a housewife, a man with two wives. So we can say that marriage is one of the most used thing in Huang Fan's story. And the feng shui practitioner, he's we can see a lot of different jobs. And the fashion designer, the private detective, the last winner. Okay, so this is one of the features of this story. And the second feature of the story is in the story we can see a lot of social problems, urban problems. For example, the first problem is freeway. Maybe in Dongbu Street we can see the problem of a freeway and maybe a bridge. Freeways are absolutely the murderers of traditional communities. The towns that freeways cut through have been completely bled out of their unique cultures, because we know that after 1970s, Taiwan started to build more and more freeways in every corners of Taiwan on the island. So it creates a lot of problems. Okay. And the second problem is the sadness in the city, because all of the buildings, all of the apartments complex look like the same. Okay. Isn't that right? Just to accommodate those freeways, everyone's been building the same cookie cutter houses. Cookie cutter is the thing we use to cut cookies, right? So all these cookie cutters, all these cookie cutter houses means all the houses with the similar appearances. Building higher fences, grayness envelopes everything. Darkness is everywhere. So this is the second problem of the city. In this, we can see in this story. And no urban planning is another problem, because we can see that sometimes government, especially the government in Taiwan, they do things in a very foolish way. So they don't have urban planning. Like you can see a lot of problem in this kind of urban project. So the way current people trample their own living environment is simply astonishing. Roads need a repair all the time. Bridges built with no foresight. Tunnels stuck everywhere. No street is spared. Okay, so if you live in Taipei for a longer period, you will have this kind of a feeling. And the last point is the word architecture. 茶水. What is 茶水? You know the word. This is Chinese 杂碎. Okay. 杂碎 is a food which combines scrambles meat, vegetable, and maybe noodles and maybe rice. Also, so this is 茶水 is in English is also a term to a substitute term for combination. If you combine things together, you can say that thing is 茶水. Okay, so it's worth in the big cities. Buildings sprout like weed. We might as well call it the world architecture 茶水. It means that you can see a lot of different style from different countries. There's no coordination. Okay, zero color coordination, no fire escapes, no leisure spaces, all concrete jungle. Okay, so this is you can see a lot of this kind of observations in Huang Fan's story. And this is the background of Huang Fan's writing, because I think this is a very important autobiographical essay written by Huang Fan. So I think it might be very important before we go into the story of the two stories written by Huang Fan. It's called Dignity and Conviction, my literary odyssey. It's written and it's published in 1986. Okay. Anyway, this passage is about the death of Huang Fan's father. After Huang Fan's father died, the family did not have a very strong economic support, so they moved from place to place more than 20 times. Okay. So he said that my homeless family drifted here and there in this metropolis of a million people. Mother gritted her teeth, squared her shoulders, and did many things that she never wanted to do, while my relatives just stood by and watched, none of them lifted even a finger to help. Yes, this is a very sad story of Huang Fan. But I think this is also, through this kind of life it is also through this kind of life experience that Huang Fan can become a writer, an urban fiction writer, because he lived all of these places in the city, and he lived with all of these characters in the city, so he can write a lot of stories about them, okay, and not only about the places, but also about people living in places. He said that we stay at no fewer than 20 places, living among rickshaw pullers, prostitutes, laborers, hawkers, and vagabonds. Once we even moved into one of those housing projects for military dependents, where there lived not a single one of us native Taiwanese. So this is something very interesting, because during the 1970s and 80s, Taiwanese people and mainlanders usually did not live together, and this is a very unique life experience for Huang Fan. This is about why Huang Fan writes about urban transformation all the time. He said that these childhood days are still vivid in my mind. I remember the tar surface of the road that turned soft and yielding in the afternoon sun, the utility poles that blackened, and the smell of rotten timber, the barefoot children who pranced about in the street, playing cops and robbers and kicking tin cans. This is the important part. I returned to these old haunts 20 years later, and he lived in the neighborhood of Longshan Temple. It's also mentioned in Crystal Boys. Maybe I think you remember. I returned to these old haunts 20 years later, and despite the many changes, the skyscrapers, the traffic lights, the movie theaters, the modernized but vulgar Longshan Temple, I hear that the monk in charge of hospitality can speak fluent English. This is quite astonishing. Nostalgia welled up inside me until I became as sentimental as a little girl. So you can see that Huang Fan writes a lot of characters about growing. The characters they grew up in the city, and we can see the past and present in the stories, like the case of Tonghu Street. And this passage, we can see Huang Fan's vision of the modern urban world, because in this phase of Taiwan's development, we can say that urbanization also means modernization. Okay, so to be modernized, you have to be similar in some ways to other international cities. So he said that our present world is slowly taking shape, a mixture of New York, Tokyo, and Calcutta, which is in India, right? Some of the old things will be totally abandoned. New communities springing up like a forest of present, frightening sadness. This is also the problem that sadness mentioned again. The era that exists in my memory has vanished beneath the wheels of bulldozers and tractors. This is Huang Fan is talking about urban renovation. Many of the old buildings, old apartment complexes were torn down and rebuilt, and the memories, the traditional way of life can only be memorized. Apartment dwellers materialize in droves on the streets. The newspaper takes up global crisis, condenses them, and sticks them on page 4. So this is a new way of living in Taipei. In this last section, Huang Fan is talking about the problem of urban morality. For example, in this story, Reggie Knight, we can see that Zhan Bumai, the main character, he tried to play the role of a good guy, but he was not appreciated by any of the other characters, right? So human beings rush about beneath the signposts of modernization and development, craning themselves for all kinds of counter-wisdom from television. Television is also very usually mentioned in Huang Fan's stories. I think this is radio, not the ratio, it's a typo. billboards, and entertainment pages, jarring sounds, dust, and ever-increasing influx of people into the city. Political slogans, commercial jingles. Always there are people telling you that no one is obliged to be good-tempered, so we can know that. Zhang Bumai might be a very he's a character who is a very good person in the city world, but he was not appreciated by other people. That cheating at the course is immoral. That you can learn English in 7 days. That you intimidate the taxman himself, and finally that you can be a success before 40. Okay, so this is Huang Fan's vision of the urban world. The first story we are going to discuss is Rainy Night. It was published in 1980. We can see these main characters first. Of course, the first main character is Zhang Bumai, and the main point of the story is about how Zhang Bumai reflect upon the relationship between himself and his wife, right? But in the process, he also took a little boy named Ah Xing from a bus stop to a hospital, and later on he was arrested by policemen to a police station, and after that he took the boy back to the boy's suburban home, right? And in the final scene we see Zhang Bumai go back to his home in the city. Okay. So we can say that this story is mainly about the interaction between Zhang Bumai and Zhang Bumai's wife, and from their interaction we can reflect upon the nature of marriage, because Zhang Bumai asks a lot of questions about marriage, and Ah Xing is a little boy whose mother died in the story, and his mother is Jiang Jinhua. He died of gas poisoning, and Zhang Tusheng is the boyfriend, and he lived together with Jiang Jinhua. He called Ah Xing to visit his mother in the hospital, in the NGU hospital, right? And we also see Ah Xing's father. Ah Xing's father is a very rude person, because in the end, toward the end of the story, we see Ah Xing was taken back to home by Zhang Bumai, and Ah Xing's father opened the door. He just say get lost to Zhang Bumai, and he also said that this is none of your damn business, right? Do you remember? Okay, so he is one of the rude urban dwellers. Okay, so I think this is a very easy. This is a very simple story, but what makes it complicated is the questions asked in the story about marriage. And in this story, like a history of condo sales, we can see people with a lot of different jobs. For example, we can see bus driver. We can see, because the first thing is on the bus, we can see a conductress in the bus, on the bus. We can see sales clerk. We can see taxi driver. All of these kind of jobs are unique in the city, at least during that time in Taiwan. And then we can see a female information desk clerk in the hospital, in NGU hospital. And we can see nurses and doctors. And we can see policemen. Okay? But we don't know what is the job of Zhang Bumai and the other main characters. Okay. And from the list of places and things in the city, we can say that in urban fiction, there's a very important sentence. Urban structure is story structure. Okay, we can see the story is set in a specific urban world, and there are specific places, things, and the people in this urban world, right? And this is the specific structure for the story. I think Taipei people and maybe Crystal Boys are just like this. And in Huang stories are especially so. Okay? So you can see the first thing is on the bus. And after that, not Huang Fan, Zhang Bumai and Ah Xing, they got off the bus at the bus station. But the bus station is wrong because the bus station is for the buses going to Veterans Hospital, not the NTU hospital. So Zhang Bumai decided to took Ah Xing to take a taxi, and they went to NTU hospital by taxi, right? And in the hospital, because of the suspicious death of the woman Jiang Jinhua, Zhang Bumai was arrested by policemen because the policemen thought that Zhang Bumai is Zhang Tusheng. Okay, of course, the pronunciation of Zhang and Zhan are quite the same, right? And so he was arrested and taken to police station. And after the mistake was cleared, he took Ah Xing to his suburban home. And later on, he went back to his home in the city. And in the last thing of the story we see, he started to initiate a dialogue between his wife. He just want to explain his events in the night and in the evening. But in the end, we know that his wife was not in the bedroom. So this is it turned out to be not a conversation but a monologue. Okay, so this is the story structure of this story. I think the most important thing in this story is the marriage, meaning of marriage. Okay, for example, in this passage, Zhang Bumai, this is his own reflection about the things happened to him and his wife. He said that because after hearing the end of year sale slogan, he said that sale was just another nonsensical expression, as meaningless as marriage or responsibility or morality or courage. So we can see the very cynical attitude of Huang Fan toward these kind of things about morality, responsibility. Actually, they are all about some kind of ethics. Okay, he could call his wife and ask her to come with an umbrella. It was not his fault that the rain was pouring down so heavily. Of course, he knew this was the time he came home from work. He also knew that he had left his umbrella at home. He was rather forgetful about things which seemed unimportant to him, such as her birthday, his promise to visit her friends somewhere, or complimenting her purchases, such as a new dress, or a scarf bought from a flea market, or a jacket bought at the crowded sale. Something very important. He said that he was rather forgetful about things which seem unimportant to him. This is a very egoist interpretation of life, right? Because in our life, especially in marriage life, you cannot only focus on things which are important to you. You have to consider what is important to your wife or your husband also, right? So I think Zhang Bumai maybe we cannot say he's selfish. We can say that he's a very careless person. He's very careless, and maybe we can also think about the absence of his wife in the home, because we can imagine that if he is a man who always forget his wife's birthday, forget his promise to visit her friends, forget to buy things for his wife, maybe his wife will abandon him and maybe his wife has long left home before long, because in the story we know that they have only married for 3 years, right? Okay, so this is something very important, and one of the problems we can think about in the story. So this is the thing about marriage. And also, nevertheless, seeing the pouring rain, she should feel pity for a hardworking man and appear before him with an umbrella. Okay, so he's a very hardworking man. This is from the protagonist Zhang Bumai's perspective. Maybe his wife considered him to be a very lazy man. Okay, so we can see this is something very interesting that we can talk about later on. And the second passage, marriage makes a man even more helpless. Zhang continued brooding. There were things one could manage very well by oneself, but not when there were 2 people. Okay, so this is a hazard of marriage. There was a few inappropriate words might blow up the whole relationship, such as "I'm too tired today," or "Can we talk about it later?" Well, that is not your business. Why bother with it? You are not married, but I'm married, so I feel very strong about these sentences. Zhang Bumai keeps thinking about the meaning of marriage in the story. He said that marriage is sacred. Of course not. According to Huang Fan's perspective, I don't think he thought marriage is very sacred. This is very ironic. Zhang recalled these words from the wedding ceremony, but this expression made him shiver all over, just like the motto on school walls. Keep the place clean all the time, or the one you saw along the street. A good citizen always pays his income tax, of course. But we say marriage is sacred. This is quite, according to Zhang Bumai, or according to Huang Fan's perspective, this statement, marriage is sacred, is as meaningless as the statement, keep the place clean all the time, or the statement, a good citizen always pays his income tax. Okay? To him, the word sacred recall a sensation like a nasty skin disease, okay? Or like the powerful pouring rain. And he himself was like a boy with a bag of oranges, that is Axin, who had to dash into the rain to carry out his study. Okay, so this is the first thing in Rainy Nights, the story of Rainy Night, marriage. This is the second thing I think which is very interesting, because through the process of storytelling, the narrator Zhang Bumai he kept thinking about the problems of marriage, and he kept saying it's time to do what? It's time to do what? So I think this is another feature of modern urban life. This is the routine of the modern life. Okay, so according to the story, the driver had his lips tightly zipped. It was better this way, thought. It's not Chen, it's Zhang Bumai. A talkative driver might be as horrible as a needy wife. By now, she must have cleared the dining table and would be sitting in front of the television, simmering. So we can say that in this story, Zhang Bumai always say that his wife is watching TV. Maybe his wife is talking on the telephone. Okay. No, she would not get angry, not unless there was a target. If he took this boy to the hospital and they went home in the same taxi, it would take nearly an hour. Okay. By then, she would have watched the evening news and weather broadcast. Rain, which she simply hated. Probably she would remain in front of the television set, channel 3 or 5 or 7. It didn't matter which. So you can say a lot of characters in Huang Fan's urban fiction stories, they're watching TV. They have a habit of watching TV. It didn't matter which. Then she would see her husband standing in the doorway, all soaked. a while later, the husband would be at the dinner table eating cold food and shivering all over. So we can see this kind of reflection of Zhang Bumai throughout the story. Okay, and the situation was obvious. He was stuck there in the morgue, as was the body lying close by. Usually he was in bed by this hour. He would turn on the small lamp at the head of his bed, cushion himself with a pillow and read. Through the open door he could hear the television. His wife always watched television till very late. Television again. If she was on the phone, she would be able to hear all kinds of noise, broken by intermittent laughter. Okay, so his wife is happy with talking on the telephone and watching television. And after reading the story, I think there are some questions that we have to think about. Maybe the first is, what is the relationship between the ring and the thing of marriage? Maybe I think rainy days make us think about something messy, something chaotic. And maybe from Zhang Bumai's perspective, his marriage life is just like rainy days. It's always very chaotic, always very messy, okay, and very, very distasteful. Okay, so from the story we can see in the first thing there's a reflection of the past because Zhang Bumai and his wife went somewhere for travel, and there's a drizzling rain. But at the end of the story, we see the rain is getting bigger and bigger, heavier and heavier. There's a pouring rain. So maybe you can say that at first his marriage problem is a little bit smaller, and later on it gets bigger and bigger. Okay. And so we can say there's a metaphorical relationship between marriage and rain. So the title, Rainy Night, is not just describing the setting of the story, but also there's another deeper meaning, deeper implication of the relationship between rain and the marriage. And we can ask ourselves, is Zhang Bumai a model citizen or foolish and unqualified husband? Okay, so we can think about this. You can think about this question by yourself, because we at the same time we see Zhang Bumai, he took a boy to the hospital and took him home. But on the other hand, we can see that he seems to be, although he is a very hardworking, from his own perspective, he's a very hardworking husband, but he's also a very forgetful and careless husband who forgot his wife's birthday and his promise to take her to visit her friends. Okay. And is his wife a good one? Because at the end of the story, we can speculate that maybe the wife had led Zhang Bumai, right? And we also see the wife did not take care of family chores. He just talked on the telephone, and he just watched TV. He don't even, and Zhang Bumai was complaining about that she was not going to take an umbrella to take her home, to take him home, right? So we can think about that, whether this wife is good or not. In the end, we see Zhang Bumai was facing an empty bedroom without the presence of his wife. So what is the implication of this closure? I think maybe his wife had left him already. And at the end of the story, why did Zhang Bumai repeat the events happened to him? Why did he lie? I think this is very interesting, because in the previous things, we see Zhang Bumai keep reflecting upon his own identity. We see a lot of negative images of him, and we see that maybe he's arrested as a suspect of murder in a police station, and he was scolded by the kid's father, right? Because the kid's father tell him to get lost, right? But in the end of the story, he tried to present him in a more positive image to his wife. He said that today's events prove that I'm not merely what you see on the surface. I mean, I'm not only the man that you see every day. I deserve your respect. He paused to clear his throat and resumed. It is only natural for a wife to respect her husband. A successful marriage is based on mutual respect. See those well-adjusted couples who don't quarrel. They respect and love each other. This is natural and very common. Okay, so we can say that maybe this is his yearning. He's yearning for a good marriage. Okay. Let's begin our second story, Tongpu Street. Tongpu Street is it's a story published in 1981, and it's not one of the most famous stories written by Huang Fan, but I think this story is also very interesting anyway. The story is quite simple. The structure of the story is quite simple. The plot of the story is quite simple, but Huang Fan feels a lot of details, metaphors, symbols into the story. Maybe this is the way he arranged his story. So this is what made the story complicated. Not the plot, but the manipulations of Huang Fan. Okay, so Tongpu Street is a small street located in the suburban area, maybe outside Taipei. It's just a river away from Taipei. A small street where trucks and buses used to pass through. So a newly built bridge changed everything. So this is one of the most important things of Huang Fan's story. Something happened, changed people's life, changed people's life forever. So this is the so-called urban transformation. So we have to pay attention to the urban transformation. Urban renovation is also some kind of change that have very strong impacts on people's life. Okay, so with more and more families moving away, and finally it was claimed by Zhiqing, the best friend of the protagonist, as a dead street, right? So we know that Tongpu Street is actually a dead street after the bridge was built. An old man moved away with his family, but came back due to his inability to start over and died in the end. So we can see that this is the miserable life of those people who were influenced by this kind of urban transformation. Okay, and a highway hotel. Actually, I don't think it's a real hotel. I think it's maybe this is a nightclub, something like that for truck drivers to attend, because the protagonist, the mother was not allowed by the father to go there because the mother was quite curious, but the protagonist's father did not allow her to go to the hotel. Okay, so maybe we can say that originally it was a very simple suburban small street, but it was changed first by a newly built bridge, and later on it was also changed by highway hotel. Okay, so after the highway hotel was built, some families moving back because maybe there were business after a long period, but the protagonist's father managed to sell his hardware store and move away. So in the final thing, we see the family relocated to a street in another part of the city. This is something very important. The bridge, the image of bridge presented from the impression of the narrator. We know that the narrator is a small boy with his best friend Zhiqing, but we don't know the name of I don't think we know the name of the small boy. Anyway, in this passage we see the small boy and Zhiqing use their imagination to attack the bridge. Okay, so from this we know that the kids know that their lives were changed by the bridge. So this is the way to make revenge on the bridge. Okay, so they use their imagination to revenge on the bridge. So he said that our school was situated beside the big bridge, which was newly built. We leaned on the window sills and gazed at the cement bridge glittering brightly under the sun. During dry seasons, the level of the stream dropped because it's only a stream or a river away from the city itself. Stones and boulders with strange shapes appeared in the bed of the stream, and the lower buttresses of the bridge, laden with moss, could be seen. I often dream of this bridge. In my dreams, it appeared in different shapes. Sometimes its form was distorted to an extent that became horrifying. Sometimes it was transformed into a circular track in the stadium, and people and the vehicles went round and round endlessly. Okay, so their lives will change after the bridge was built. Okay, so however, moreover, we could bombard it. It means the bridge. Bombard the bridge very accurately and knock it flat. I saw the cars fall into the stream, one after another, until it was so full the river could hold no more. The rest of the cars on the bridge could do nothing but turn around and lead through the old street that passed by our house. So this is the wish of the kid, the narrator. They want the cars and the trucks, the buses to pass through their Tongpu Street again, and it can become a street which was vivid, not a dead street, right? Okay, so this is their wish, but it's not possible anyway. Afterwards, we would slide down the mound, laughing and yelling, and run towards the tree where our bicycles were parked. One afternoon, while we were sliding down the mound, Zhiqing suddenly informed that his family was planning to leave Tongpu Street. It's a dead street. He raised his voice as if to announce it to the world, a dead street. Okay, so this is the Tongpu Street was changed after the bridge was built. Okay, so first of all, we know in the former scene we see how these two boys they use imagination to attack, to revenge the bridge, but actually in reality the bridge wins in the end because Zhiqing claimed to move with his family to the city. So after hearing the news of Zhiqing's moving, the main character say that finally I stood atop the fortress. The fortress is a small heap of soil near the bridge that once belonged to us. Now it had been completely destroyed by enemies from the other side of the river. So we can say that what is on the other side of the river? Of course, that is the city, okay? So we can say that this is the antagonism. This is a metaphorical antagonism between the city and the suburban area, right? The power of the city on the suburban area. Okay, the bushes hung their heads. The little flowers lost their colors, and the many ghostly shadows arose among them. I stood there until it was almost completely dark. Then I slid down the mound and ran towards the west lane alone. Okay, so it was the Tongpu Street was described as a piece of the west lane. And like I said, many of the stories, especially urban fiction, they use the formula of past and present contrast, right? And this is the case of Tongpu Street. Like I said, the writer Huang Fan liked to compare, to contrast the reality of the change, before the change and after the change. So the narrators say that when business was good, their business of a hardware store, my father even took in a young apprentice to sleep in the corner where I put my bike. He used to crouch motionless between two racks. He was like a wreck himself. Sorting out the bent nails, sometimes from the back would come father shouting, and the apprentice would reply at quite a pause. Because of that, my father always said he was stupid. One thing he often did for my father was to go into the street to call my mother back home. So this is the good old days. Right? And my mom loved around with her neighbors all day long because at the time of the main plot happened, there's fewer and fewer neighbors. But in these good old days, there are many neighbors because all the buses and trucks passing by the Tongpu Street, and there are still many people, still many residents living in Tongpu Street. In those days, she used to wear a Western-style dress with alternating red and green stripes. Occasionally, truck drivers driving by would make vulgar gestures at her. The young apprentice had gone away, and my mother had put that Western-style dress away in the wardrobe. So this is the before and after. After the truck drivers gone away, everything changed. Truck drivers no longer appear on our street, and the drivers of those few cars that passed by kept their heads inside. Except for dust, there was nothing to be seen. And we also see the story of Uncle Ah-Tzu. Uncle Ah-Tzu is a very miserable old man because he's an old man who had moved into the town with his family, but he couldn't get used to the new life, and he returned to Tongpu Street. But at the end of the story, he died because he cannot start over. Okay, so I think this is what Huang Fan want to tell us about those oppressed people in the suburban area. This is about the return of the truck, because after the return of the truck, more and more people of Tongpu Street, they came back to live. The summer holidays finally came. Part of the homework assigned for summer was to write a diary. So all of the entries of the diary are about the truck drivers, and how the people of Tongpu Street reacted to this kind of return of the trucks. Okay, I hope I could faithfully record everything that happened each day in my diary, but somehow I was never able to express myself clearly. I remember the entry that appeared most frequently was a truck went by. I thought teacher would be puzzled. Why did I spend my day doing nothing but counting trucks? The truck came again. So what? Okay, this is a very great difference from his life. Trucks came and went like what I did every day, like brushing my teeth and washing my face. Our teacher would say this: you wash your face and brush your teeth every day. Would you write that down every day? When the first truck came into Tongpu Street, everyone rushed out to look at it. Mother and I stood under eaves, watching how it churned up gray clouds of dust, and seeing Father's face gradually emerge after the dust had dissipated. He and a few others stood under an enormous sign that read Highway Hotel. They were all Burmese. Okay, so from this appearance of their face, from the expression of their face, you can guess that this is not a real hotel. It's some kind of a nightclub, something like a nightclub for truck drivers. Okay, and this is the end, the last passage of the story. After we left Tongpu Street, we settled down in a street in town. The house was directly opposite the filthy little park. The neighborhood dumped its garbage in a place originally designed to be a fountain. Beside the park, because we know that this is some kind of poor management of the government, so we can say this is another description of a social problem. Beside the park, there were a few buildings in process of construction, and we can see that how the way Huang Fan described the city in the process of the change and the transformation. By day, a deafening tumult of noise came through the window. But once night arrived, the entire street became deadly quiet. The dry twigs, the stone benches, the fences, and the railings in the park were like ghostly shadows moving to and fro. So from this passage, we can know that they are not living in the downtown. Maybe they are living in a marginal area in the city. Okay, they are not in a very remote place in the city. Sometimes a car sped by. The headlights shot through the windows and broadly shadows into your dreams, like it or not. Okay, so the end of the story is quite confusing. I read the story several times, but I don't quite get the meaning of this ending. And I searched through many of the scholarly discussion of this story, but I don't think I can find an answer. But I think, let me read this passage first. At midnight one wintry day, I was suddenly awakened by a strange sounding kind of scream. I listened intently. I had heard that noise somewhere before. I thought about it for a while, then I put on my clothes and walked into the sitting room. In the dim light, I saw father standing beside the window. I moved forward and looked through the window, but there was only complete darkness. There was nothing at all. Okay. What was that noise? I asked. My voice was trembling. So I don't know whether you remember. There's two things in which the main character, the narrator, was awakened in the midnight, right? The first one is that both of the mother and the narrator, they were awakened, and they found that at first they thought that was a dog. There's a dog barking and crying outside, and later on, after the father came in, the father told him that it's not a dog, it's not a wild dog, it's Uncle Arts, the old man, right? The poor old man. And this here, the narrator says that I had heard that noise somewhere before. And that noise is strange sounding kind of scream. Maybe you can, because this is not a ghost story, we cannot say that this is Uncle Arts because Uncle Arts already died in the story, right? So, but we can say that this is some kind of social or urban problem because Huang Fan tried to tell us that no matter where you go, no matter wherever you move to, you will encounter this kind of a scream, this kind of haunting things in your life, right? So I think this kind of ending needs interpretation, and you can interpret the ending of this story by yourself. Okay. Next time we read Wild Child written by Zhang Dazhen. Thank you. Bye bye.